embarrassed by it, he said.
If he wins this week, do we update that file photo and make him a blonde now?
I think you have to. And he get a lot of good official world golf ranking points available this week with 3 of the top 4 in the world.
We're going to see how he plays. Again, we goes back to the idea that if he can drive the ball, not great, just decent. Every other part of his game is so strong, so he puts himself in play. It's going to give him an opportunity to score. And again, we know how much success he has had on this golf course.
Yeah, very, very healthy finally, he said. And last year it was a situation kind of putting like tape and Band-Aids on his body, trying to find a way to kind of muscle through the major championship portion of the season especially. And hey, he missed 1 cut and had 3 other top 10 finishes.
I was not going to worry, and we debated this earlier this week, but when you look at just the ebb and flow of his career, it's been pretty clear. He will go into these flows. He will get into the situation where he's not playing his best, but he always seems to playing his way out of it, going into the Masters, going into the PGA Championship, going into the U.S. Open. I wasn't going to get nervous until we were having this conversation 6 months from now.
And amazingly open about what he expects of himself, not shying away from really great expectations. Yeah, I think that double-digit major championships are in play for me. Not shying away from saying, yeah, Tiger's 15 and Jack's 18 are in play. But who else in the modern game is going to start using those names in those words in terms of your goals?
We've talked about it this week, saying the quiet thing out loud, and that's saying the quiet thing out loud. I think you have a lot of players, talented players, who have already on the board, already won majors, that sort of have that vision that, yes, we can chase down Tiger Woods. I think Jack is kind of difficult to fathom, but I think they think it internally. Say it out loud, then you got to back it up. He only puts more pressure on himself when he does this, but he seems to enjoy that.
He really does. That's kind of how he's been built. Someone who wasn't really ballyhooed necessarily as an amateur. He'll tell you he didn't come through the front door in this game. You've got the Justin Thomases who we saw coming. Jordan Spieth, U.S. Junior Amateur champ. This is a player who had to go overseas to play, to hone his game, to really become the player that he is today.
I always thought that was an interesting way for him to find his way up through the ranks. He could have followed everyone else. He could have tried to play his way up through the Korn Ferry Tour. He could have tried Monday qualifying or sponsors exemptions and doing it that way. He's certainly talented enough to have pulled that off. He decided to go in a different direction, playing his way up from the Challenge Tour all the way up to the DP World Tour. It was the European Tour at the time. It took a lot. It was difficult. He traveled around. He had to get papers added to his passport. He was traveling around the world so much. I think it helps the persona, the person he is right now, that he did that. I find it fascinating that no one has followed suit. You do not see young players doing what he did. I think he took a very, very special person who was mentally tough and very, very confident to pull that off.
Different grasses on the golf courses, different languages spoken, struggling to find a place to stay. Where do I eat?
Good foods.
Different foods. I mean, absolutely. And here he is now, a 4-time major champ, 8 PGA Tour wins, someone who is confrontational. Listen, if you're a golf fan, you may not like the way he goes about his business. We see these players in some sense a little more collaborative. He's very, very much a confrontational player.
Bryson DeChambeau was a conversation earlier in the week about what we know now is going to be an issue for him going forward, which is injuries. You can't swing that hard. You can't add 40 pounds of muscle to your frame and expect not to deal with some sort of injuries. Now, he's trying to control that, and we're going to have to see where it goes. I think Brooks is in a very, very similar situation. He's going to have to find a way to stay healthy. He hasn't done a very good job of that the last few years, but if he can stay healthy, you expect big things out of him.
Now, I'll never forget Bryson DeChambeau calling Patrick Reed, saying, hey, he's one of my co-workers, I think was how he referred to him in an interview with Todd Lewis. I don't think that Brooks Koepka sees any of these guys as his co-workers. He sees them as imperatives, as people that could be in his way of trying to accomplish what he wants to accomplish.
I certainly don't think he looks at his co-workers as equals in this particular situation. When he talks in the context of, it's embarrassing that I'm 20th in the world and I only have to go up 19 more spots, he's serious. I mean, he's not making this up. He's not pounding his chest. This is the way he thinks. He's not afraid to, again, say the quiet thing out loud.
Yeah, and if he isn't always as focused during PGA Tour stops, he is at least this week. He says that this feels big time to him. He said that the WM Phoenix Open feels like a major championship with the crowd, with the heckling. He mentioned New York. You hear the boos behind us right now. He feeds off it. He remembers when he was starting to kind of lose that lead at Bethpage Black at that PGA when Dustin Johnson was making a move. Brooks was like, hey, you know what? I fed off that. I needed to hear those heckles and come on, DJ, kind of wake up and close out that major championship.
It's interesting to see how people are motivated. You're right. I think the boos, and he has mentioned this throughout the week in both interviews he's done this week, that he likes the boos and he likes the cheers just as much. But I think when he gets on a green like this, on the 16th green, the boo's only going to fire him up. There is something about his demeanor. There's something about him viewing himself as an athlete that could transcend whatever sport you happen to be playing, that drives him to perform in front of a gallery like this.
Brooks Koepka about to make his way to the golf course in his title defense on this Friday. Someone who's already on the golf course. How about the player of the year?